Just do it. Sounds familiar? Well, if you're a Nike fan like myself, you would know that there's an extended quote, which is, "Accept no limits, just do it." But what exactly is the word limit? Limit is something that bounds, restrains, or confines, or the utmost extent. The definition is as bad as what it actually is. I learned the word limit when I was studying English, like anyone else would. But it was nothing that I paid much attention to or had a personal feeling towards. It was just another word I was being forced to be inputted into my mind. But that was until grade 5. Grade 5 was when I learned about girls not getting equal opportunities and that African Americans had to serve as slaves in America. These things made me open my eyes to the real world. Learning about equality, inequality, equity, discrimination, stereotypical and biased thoughts toward a group of people made me look at a forest when I was originally looking at a tree. Limit was not just another word on the dictionary. It was a reality, a cage that some of us had to carry around with us for the rest of our lives. And my previous ignorance made me feel inferior. As soon as I got home, I opened my laptop and started to do a research on people who broke their limits. The first person I remember searching about was Amelia Earhart. I still remember my eagerness to be just like her, to overcome something that was confining me. In this case, the cage that was confining her was the stereotypical thoughts that people in the society had towards her gender. Just as women were given the rights to vote, in 1920, she gained an interest in flying. She said, "I knew I had to fly." And not too long after gaining an interest in flying, she was able to gain a pilot's license and set a new world record for female pilots of over 4.2 kilometers. And not too long after that, she was able to accomplish an extraordinary feat in which she crossed the Atlantic. A similar example of such is Barack Obama. He was the 44th president of the U.S. history. He was able to win the election in both 2008 and in 2012, with almost double of his opponents. And similar to Amelia Earhart, the limit he broke in this case was that he was the very first. There were no predecessors that African Americans could become the president. And a different example to such person is him, Stephen Hawking. He was diagnosed with ALS when he was only 21 years old. The doctors thought that he had only a couple of years to live, since ALS has the possibility to cause respiratory failure or pneumonia caused by paralysis. During the time that he was alive, he was able to come up with theories that shock the scientific world. And he wrote a lot of famous books like A Brief History of Time. You see, these are just a few examples of people who broke the limits. And there are much more. And maybe you, who are sitting here today, might be one of them, someone that will remain in the history books. A word by Bruce Lee that I will remember for the rest of my life is, if you always put limits on everything you do, physical or anything else, it will spread into your work and into your life. There are no limits. There are only plateaus, and you must not stay there. You must go beyond them. You will never know your full potential if you just stay in a safe place. A safe space is a beautiful place which we can feel invulnerable and call home, but not somewhere where you can know your full potential at. People are wired to grow, and it is an essential component of life. And yes, it is frightening to venture out of your comfort zone, since it involves the unknown risk of failure, defeat, and may lower our self-esteem. And we humans are afraid of the unknown. And now you may be wondering, then what am I supposed to do? Well, first, it's about the mindset. You must think about what you're going to gain and not what you will lose. For what you will gain is much more than what you will lose and will contribute to personal growth and what you want to accomplish. The world's brightest writers, Brad Stulberg and Steve Magnus, once said, "Our ego, or self, or central governor, serves as a protective mechanism that holds us back from reaching our true limits." Even if you hurt yourself, you have to push yourself to your limits, because that's what counts. You can't really live until you dive just a little. But when you fall and fail, you can't just get up. You have to come back up with flames. You have to be more determined than ever and learn from your mistakes. There is no easy way in life. But listening to the speech is just what any other valedictorian or someone at a commencement speech might be saying. So I decided to take a step further and study into the mechanism of the inability of going beyond the limits. The gravity that brings us down is fear. Fear is the one and only thing that can be so powerful that even sometimes love can stand up to it. And we humans are typically afraid of the unknown and the state of being alone. Think about it. We fear ghosts and monsters and all those supernatural creatures, but maybe it's because we don't have a good understanding about them. For example, cows. Are we afraid of cows? No, we know too much about them. Now, please, I don't mean we don't fear sharks and snakes and all those things that can kill us. But it's rather the unknown possibilities that lie inside of them that we fear. Our brain prefers predictable negative consequences to uncertain outcomes that may turn out to be positive. This is also why we fear change. We can't stand the anticipation, and sometimes that causes more damage than the thing itself. The uncertainty also creates a fear of failure, especially since we live in a society where we reverse success. This also creates the fear of losing control. We prefer to be in the driver's seat all the time. Researcher Dan Gilbert once said, "If we lose the ability to control things at anywhere between our entrance and our exit, we become unhappy, helpless, hopeless, and depressed." And another thing we fear is the state of being alone. Located in 2709 East 25th Street in Minneapolis, Minnesota, is a one-story building, and inside lies the scariest room in the whole wide world. It's not that people get tortured inside of this room. However, even the toughest can't stand the perfect silence. A perfect silence in which you can hear your own breath, heartbeat, and all those little movements that our body makes. This is because it's not physical pain, but rather mental. Our biological aversion to silence is only a symptom of something deeper than that. Our fundamental fear of being alone. Maybe this sounds a little exaggerated and unrealistic, but think about it. When you're home alone, we tend to look at the TV, binge on Netflix, go on YouTube, go on social media, read a book, or anything that keeps us occupied. However, once there's nothing to do, we feel hollow and empty. This shows how much we rely on social relationship. We stay in different cliques, and somewhere we all seek our existence in. Somewhere we exist physically and mentally in. A place that assures us from facing ambiguity. Similar to the pursuit of the one or soulmate, to having to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, until death do us apart. One of the very few lines we have to say in a wedding, an insurance for a lifetime. From the beginning of human civilization, we have stuck together out of the fear of death. We would go hunting in groups because that meant that we can fight together, and the risk of us dying would decrease. We humans are animals, and our mothers with their motherly nature hope for us to fit in so that our risk of dying would decrease. Similar to how every other prey prefer to stick together, because the more population there is, the higher the survival chance will be. A herd of 10 sheep means, let's say a lion or a wolf eats 1 sheep per day, means 10% of being hunted on, 90% in which you will survive. And a herd of 100 sheep means 1%, meaning 99% of the time you will live. I would pick the 100, no doubt. And if we were to list it all out, I would have to talk for hours, and our limit time is around 17 minutes, so I'm not going to do that. But we must remember a word from navel. A Twitter philosopher who puts it into much more eloquent words than mine. In the simplest of words, life is a single-player game. We are brought to life alone, and we die alone. We find ourselves and lose ourselves in between those little factors. And we enjoy with our own dopamine, serotonin, and endorphin, and we suffer pain alone. Thus, you will be alone forever. Taking the first step will always be the hardest. But just lay one foot on the first step, and it will be a little easier. Go stand in a place a little higher than right now. And with each step you are going to take, you will be bringing yourself up. And soon, maybe without even realizing, you will be reaching your limits. Fear itself. Thank you.